Good afternoon. This is your Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host Seifu. Today, I have to admit, I've gotten the opportunity to actually talk to, I would like to say my brother, because he's a Pan-African brother of ours from close by. Could you please introduce yourself? And I would like to say welcome to our show.
Brother, I love your name. Can you repeat again? Kasela.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Oh, my name is Mika Chavala, and I was born in Tanzania, but right now I'm here in Ethiopia. I'm an African, and I'm the founder of Swahili Nation One Africa Foundation. Yeah, it's good to be back home.
Brilliant.
And it's good to meet you.
Yes.
I'm your little brother.
Exactly. I've talked about you. I also have a radio show, which I've been hosting for the last 15 years.
Oh.
It's also called Afreeqa, which is We Africans. And I think it was 3 years ago when we discovered you.
Oh.
And I've actually even had your voice being heard on the radio.
Really?
And it was kind of exciting to find other Africans actually fighting the same fight. You know what I mean? You're on the same page.
Indeed.
As opposed to so separated by a lot of other things. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm here to pick up the stick.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Now, since we do know so much about you, and now my show, obviously you haven't been on it, so I would like you to slowly describe you, what you do, and what you would like to do.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm an African, and what I do right now is we are trying to unite our people, and we have this foundation called Swahili Nation One Africa. Basically, the goal of our foundation is to unite our people inside the continent and outside the continent as well, because we have a lot of our brothers and sisters who were taken a long time ago. They're living outside of Africa, but they're part of us. So we are trying to bring everybody together through what we are doing, through different, platforms and different ways and different initiatives. That's basically what I've been trying to do for the past 3 years on the camera. But before that, I was just, because I lived in South Korea, I was doing pretty much the same thing, but it was more like person to person. Like, you see the problem and you try to fix it, you try to solve it. Yeah, but 3 years ago, that's when I started to do this publicly, and I guess that's when you found me.
I know, right? Brilliant. Now, Ethiopia means so much to you.
Yes.
And the reason, it could be that all the other African brothers also have that same feeling, but I did not get the opportunity to even hear them really expressing themselves. So I would like to know, at what point did you fall in love with Ethiopia, or Ethiopia has always been a part of you?
Well, 3 years ago, when I started to do reaction on Ethiopian music, that's when I found out about this beautiful culture of Ethiopia. Before that, to be honest, I didn't know much about Ethiopia. I didn't even get to hear a single music from Ethiopia throughout my life. And I had my friend from Ethiopia. I met him in 2013. We are studying together. We live in the same room. I tried the food back then. But I don't know, it was kind of like just another nation that I was not interested on. I didn't even know that I was not interested on. But 3 years ago, I was doing some reactions of Tanzania and other countries, and then I realized that Ethiopia is East Africa, but I've never heard anything from Ethiopia. Even in my country, I've never heard anyone playing anything. So I was like, let me try to react on one of the music. And I did that, and I just fell in love from the start. And from that point onward, like, the rest is story. But I think that's how through music
is when you
because I'm a musician too. That's when I began to love Ethiopia.
You are a musician also.
Yes.
Since you did reactions on Ethiopian music, what was the first music or the first singer's music that you actually covered?
Yeah, actually, I need to memorize that, because I always get this question. And the first song I did, it was this one guy. He's very young, Ethiopian. It sounds like East African music. It sounds like, Tanzanian music.
Is it the melody, the rhythm that got to you?
Exactly, the melody,
Usually
the
is.
rhythm. And I was like, oh, this is Ethiopian music. And then the next reaction, it was Teddy Afro.
Yeah, because I saw you on that one.
Exactly. That's when I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So most of the time I say Teddy Afro because I forget the first one. But yeah. That's that.
I'd heard at some point somebody had asked you if there were a few people that you wanted to meet in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And the names that you had listed, I actually went down the list and I was 100% sure you had met two of them.
Yeah.
Which was Dr. Abiy and Rofnan. Because Rofnan just had a concert and you were there, so I'm hoping you met him then.
Yeah, I met Rofnan, yes.
And then our Prime Minister was at a meeting that you were in a few days ago.
Yes.
Did you get that chance?
I didn't get a chance to shake his hand.
But you saw him.
I saw him because we were taking pictures together in a group and people, they were just jumping to him. Like people, they're just all over him. So I was standing there and looking at this guy next to me and I was like, oh, this is him. And I was like, my time will come. So I just humbly, I went back to my seat. Like, the time will come. Yeah,
yes, but at least,
There's a place at least to be in the
same
same room and to see him is right there. I was just looking at him all this time and it was amazing. It was fascinating to see him there. Yeah.
So the third person you had mentioned was Teddy Afro.
Teddy Afro. Yeah, man. Like, I met his wife, in one of the events a couple months ago, and she said that, hey, we watch your reaction, sometimes. And I was
so
like,
they know of you.
Yes, I was like, I hope I can see your husband one day. But he's the hard man to find. Yeah.
Like you said, one day, God willing.
One day, yeah.
I'm going to come back to a more serious question.
I love that.
What do you think of our African leaders?
African leaders.
You being the youth, you being out there.
Yeah.
What's your feeling? Are we doing the right thing?
Before I used to be very critical with them, which I am still until right now. But right now I think a little bit different because working for Swahili Nation for 3 years, the more you love Africa and you work for Africa, the more you discover so many things that, some of them, they walk away from it. Some of them, they even get more passion to fight, for it. So for me, I get more like energy to fight for it because I see so many things that are deep within, undercover, that a lot of people, they don't see, they don't understand. And so when it comes to our leaders, I think they're in a very difficult position. I can sense that because even me myself, just with my small organization, I see the position I am in, attacks from every side.
Exactly.
And sometimes, one day I filmed one video I share on my Twitter and I said, sometimes the only solution, the only decision you have is either to choose 10 people to die or 100 people to die. So I was asking people like, which option are you gonna take out of that? And I'm not here to defend them, but I realized that the pressure that Africa we have from the outside, because after independence, it kind of like Africa, we are not really independent economically today. Exactly. And so because of that, it's kind of like there's this like string attached with the West and East. And at the same time, your people expect you to do things without depending there. And cutting these roots and all this connection, it has been there for many years, for like 60 years or 50 years. How are you going to do it? And Africa, we are not united. If you decide to stand alone, you're going to have sanction. Maybe medicines, they're not going to be shipped to you because we still depend on the West and all the stuff. So there's so many politics surround them. And sometimes it makes it very difficult for them to do the right thing, even though their intention is to do the right thing. And so one decision that I've decided for myself, I say that I want to be loyal to my people and I want to be loyal to my leaders. I'm going to question them. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to keep them accountable with everything they say, everything they do, but I'm not going to turn away from them unless they're gone away from the leadership. As long as they're there leading at that moment, they've been elected democratically, I will stay with them and I'll try to contribute to the development of what they're doing instead of working against them and being disloyal because they're facing a lot of stuff.
They are, or even judging them for that matter.
Yes.
We can't sit on this side and say, he didn't do this, he should have done this.
Yeah.
Because like you said, we have no clue.
No clue. No
None
clue.
whatsoever.
We only see we only see what is happening on the outside.
Exactly.
But when you go in the inside, and I mean it's top secret, so you cannot know. But I think sometimes they pray and wish that we understand what they're going through. It's not easy to lead like a country of in my country we have like 61 million people, or 100 and something million, or 200. It's not easy, and they need to do their work. They need to, try their best, at least so that we may have like the common ground between the people and them. But also we need to, to somehow understand and be patient with them.
Yeah. That's what I say too. We have to be patient. It's given. We've elected them. They're
Yeah.
in that office.
Yeah.
Let them do their job
Yeah.
instead of us out here saying, he didn't do this, she didn't do this.
That's true.
So how do you think we can be proud? Because a lot of stuff has been done.
Yeah.
So for an African to walk in his country with his head held high and being proud of them ourselves.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think just the fact that we are African, that should be the first reason for us to be proud.
Thank
right?
you.
Because this is where the humankind, the history began, and our story began with us as kings and not as slaves. Just with that fact, just because your identity is African, you should be proud. You're proud. Somebody else want to take advantage of you, but we are still here standing. Someone came to colonize you and all this stuff, but we are still here standing. Someone is still exploiting you, but we are still here standing. So there's a lot of things to be proud because we are strong, we are smart, we are beautiful, wonderfully made. You know what I'm saying? And but I think apart from that, we don't just need to dwell on the history and what happened in the past, but I think we need to actualize, all these ideas that we have today in our daily lives. I have 3 principles in my life, and it's, preparations, details, and time. That in everything that I do, I have to well prepare myself. If it is knowledge, if it is skills, if it is whatever I need to do that, I need to focus on the details, small things that a lot of people, they don't pay attention to. I need to focus those kind of stuff, and time. I need to keep time because time is more precious than money or than anything else. And I feel like the reason why Africa, we kind of like delaying in our development, it's because we do not really care about time. Most of the time we would call African time, but I rebuke that.
Thank you. So
in
do
the
I.
name of the God.
Thank you.
I rebuke that in the name of
too.
Jesus,
Yeah,
if I can say
no.
that. But I rebuke that because I keep time.
Yeah.
So it's not African time. It's the culture that it's not ours. You know what I'm saying? But it's a culture that we kind of like got used to it, and it become our daily routine. But I don't want that, and I hope our leaders and our people also will focus on that and will really keep time, because you cannot fight with time.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
Ethiopian Airlines. It's Africa's pride. How is Ethiopian Airlines changing the narratives of African image?
Yeah.
Africa's image.
That's a really good question, because it just reminded me, I had an interview with the manager of Ethiopian Airlines in South Korea. And, we're talking about all this stuff what they're doing. I think one thing that I believe that it will transform Africa or continent is institutions. Institutionalization of Africa. When you go to all these so-called developed country, you will see that the change that has been made in the countries is not because of the government, but merely it's because of the institutions. So government provided platform for private sectors, local, sectors to actually, to create the institutions, schools, hospitals, roads, and all this stuff. I lived in South Korea for 9 years. That country has been transformed by private sectors, by companies like, if I can name them. Can I name them? Yeah, like Samsung, Hyundai, Kia, and so many others just in, South Korea. So I think when you look at Ethiopian, you see that institution that can actually bring about change to the country, but as well to the continent, because nobody can argue that Ethiopian Airline is the first airline here in Africa, and also is competing internationally outside of Africa, which is amazing. I've seen in South Korea what they're doing. And so you see like they have like, aviation academy, which they're transforming it to university. They have like hotel one. It seems to be like it's going to be one of the biggest hotel in Africa because they're still expanding it. So all these different stuff, I think they can contribute to the, to the country's economy. But not only that, when you look at Africa at large, today you can go anywhere in Africa by using Ethiopian Airlines. So in a way, Ethiopian Airlines is Pan-African Airlines.
Absolutely.
For me. That's how I see it, because it's
Absolutely.
connecting the entire continent together. And not only that, it's connecting the continent with the rest of the world, which is like they need to be, supported. They need to be applauded. And if you are an African, you better use Ethiopian Airlines.
Exactly.
All right?
You see, now I completely agree. And the other thing is, we really don't have other choices.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my concern is when you come to the other side, when there's competition, it's always good for the customers because tickets, you can shop around. But currently, we only have one. And the flights are very expensive trying to go. Like
That's
if I
true.
wanted to go visit Tanzania versus Ghana,
Yeah.
I mean, the prices are
That's
not like competitive.
That
and
is
they
true.
can't be competitive because they are the only ones.
Exactly. That's true.
So how can we convince them? Not really convince them, but work with them where there is a way. Because I've always talked about we have to travel to each other's countries.
Yeah.
And in order to do that,
Yeah.
I don't want to go with Lufthansa.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? I would
Indeed,
definitely
indeed.
want to take Ethiopian Airlines or Kenyan Airways or one of our own.
Yeah, indeed.
So what do you think is the best way for Africans to travel to other African countries, price-wise?
That's why I'm fighting for One Africa, because I hope right now we had like a railway system all across Africa continent, connecting all of us together, because that would be a
That would
competition.
be absolutely.
Some other people, they would just
absolutely.
love to take a train, here and there. So for the airline, of course, they will rethink about their price again. Because I think one thing that I have issue with the business is that a lot of business, they're looking for, creating a profit more than caring about the customers, which I'm always against, even though myself, I'm a businessman. Like, I studied economics and, I have a lot of ideas of business. I'm trying to actualize them. And so I think that would be one of the ways to kind of like, keep them accountable. But also I think, promoting our other African airlines, like if you say we have Kenyan Airlines, we have actually Tanzanian Airlines, we have Rwanda, we have South African. If all of these different airlines in their countries, can be promoted in a way, so that we may not just have one choice, but we may have varieties of choices, because all are Africans, right?
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, we have to support Africans.
How do you
Yes.
get to West Africa?
Ethiopian Airlines?
Exactly. How much do you pay?
Oh, God.
Sometimes it's cheaper to go to Europe or
Exactly, that's what
America.
I heard.
The reason why I'm bringing, and I'm actually even
Yeah.
sticking on this subject is
Yes.
because, when you make it comfortable and easy for me to travel within Africa, is
Yeah.
the only time I'm going to do that.
Indeed.
But if I'm paying $1,200 to go to US or Paris,
Yeah.
and you're asking maybe $1,300 to go to Mauritius
Yeah.
or Seychelles,
Yeah.
where am I going to choose?
Indeed.
Unfortunately, the other one wins.
Yeah.
So how do we convince our sisters and brothers to pay just $200 more extra to go here?
I think that's almost impossible, because majority of Africans, we don't have that money.
No.
The other day we were talking about foreign investment in the countries. For example, I was looking at the investment policy in Ethiopia. You need to have 200,000 USD to invest. So basically only billionaires can do that. Yeah. You cannot really have normal people to do that. So I think for that we need to convince Ethiopian Airline
I think so.
to rethink about that, or maybe to give even some promotions, so that it can support our people and can encourage the traveling from one country to another country within the continent.
So, I spoke to another person I was interviewing. She actually had a traveling company. And we talked about this. And one of the things that I thought would be a good thing is having one of the conversations we thought, we thought was a good idea was, what if they had like You know, like all the others, we've seen all the Europeans and Americans, when they do their airlines, when they want people, when they're being competitive, they have like nice fares. You know, might be going to Las Vegas, might be going to Paris, whatever. So why couldn't they have discounted fares, like seasonal discounted fares? Go to Seychelles with then I would be excited to go to Seychelles as opposed to Paris. You know what I mean? Because we have
That's
some
so
beautiful
true.
islands.
That's so true. And that it could be the way of promoting, Africa's
you.
units,
Yeah.
by doing something like that, and also promoting internal, domestic tourism.
Because it encourages each other.
Exactly. Yeah. People, they're like, oh, I can go there by this money. I'm gonna go there. Yeah. I think we need that. That's brilliant. Yeah. Ethiopian Airlines.
We
I
should
hope you're
suggest
listening.
it to them. I know. So now I come to our diasporas. You actually mentioned it earlier, which I truly appreciate, because sometimes I think they've forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I usually play African American music on my radio show, and sometimes they call me and ask me, "Why aren't you playing African music?" I'm like, "Excuse me?
This is African
This
music.
is African music." They're like, "No, they're from America." I'm like, you see? It's a problem.
Yeah.
And then recently I got introduced to Professor James Small, who's an African American activist.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You know what he said?
Yeah.
And he's talking about his African American brothers and sisters. He said, African Americans are forgotten. He said, and it really hurt, quite honestly. He said, we have no mother, we have no father. We actually literally fend for ourselves. We have no other African country that says, okay, who did what to the African Americans, whatever's going on in whichever state. He says there's nobody that questions when a brother dies. Nobody calls and says, or even the AU for that matter says, okay, what's going on with, the killings here?
Yeah.
They don't want that relationship. They've never wanted it. And we haven't figured it out. We still think we can pick sides. We can come and join with the French, or we can join with the Americans, or we can join with the British. We think we can pick sides. Close your eyes and look at the 54 nations in Africa and open your eyes and see if you pick the side that's worthy of picking.
Coming back to my question, how do you see the African diasporas? Would you say they have as much responsibility as the Africans in Africa changing the narratives?
Absolutely. I always say this, that Africa is one big family with 55 different children, 54 countries in Africa, and one diaspora. We are one. So I always say, and I always believe that, because I once, I am a diaspora, by the way, lived outside for 9 years. I was kind of, I was not born there, but as a diaspora in that sense. And I think, and I think there's a balance here. I tweeted about this before, that, for example, when you have diaspora coming back home, then they should be, of course, willing to learn the culture and to interact with the people, and to be among the local people, right? I've seen in some region that, some of them, they move back in the continent and they just have their own community as a diaspora in Africa. So they don't really interact with the local people. They don't understand the language, or they don't even learn. And so you still have the gap. The same gap we have right now between Africa and diaspora, we have in the continent now. And also us as lenders here, Africans in the continent, we have responsibility as well to accept, to open our hearts, towards our brothers and sisters, knowing that they are us, right? And embrace them and not feel intimidated by them, because we have that, thing, like you just intimidated, oh, maybe he's from this, oh, it might be better, like that kind of intimidation, it should not be there, or the fear. If we all play our part, I think it will be very easy for us to come together and, to unite. And I think, so whether you're a diaspora in the continent or outside of the continent, you still have a big role to contribute to the, Africa's economy or Africa's growth by maybe investing or create institutions or even moving back to the continent. And I think also the governments in the continent, African Union, whatever, they should also have a space for our people. We were talking about this yesterday, and we say, our African countries, most of African countries, we don't allow to have like double citizenship.
Yes.
But it's a time to give that to our diaspora people. Because most of them, they want to have that Africa identity on the paper so that they may be able to come home anytime or as well to leave. So I think we have responsibility to provide that to them, even if we do not allow, but for diaspora, it has to be exceptional, both in the in the continent or even in the African Union, because right now I'm pushing for one passport, and so I think we should.
Exactly. I was going to ask you about that one.
Oh, then I'm gonna hold on for that question.
No, you can actually. You know, when you ask that question, I would like to know where you were.
Yeah.
What even pushed you? Why did you think?
Yeah.
Out of all the questions that you had, it was so important to actually mention the passport.
Exactly. I've thought about this before, but that day when I went to the African Union headquarters, there's I've always been bashing so much on African Union again, and tag them on Twitter. But that day when I went there, again, there's a special energy I felt in that room. And I saw all these pictures of the founders of OAU, and I got special feeling, just being in that presence and just remembering all the sacrifices ancestors made. And so I was sitting, I was actually not supposed to talk because I was there as a media personality. People who were supposed to talk, they were appointed by the government to come, all the youth, by the president. So they came, we had like 2 Tanzanians there, and I was sitting just right across this Tanzanian guy, and he was about to speak, so I asked him, I said, hey man, can you divide up your time?
Exactly, can I have half of it?
Yeah. He was gracious enough. He was like, oh yes, we can do that. So he contributed, and then he gave me a chance. And at that moment, when I was just talking, I was asking myself, well, we have African Union, and we have 55 members of this organization. We have leaders are meeting here every single year, maybe twice, I don't know. These guys are so close than you think. Like African leaders, they're very close. They talk to each other. Maybe they have even a WhatsApp group.
I know, right?
Yeah. But why we're not doing the same thing to our people? And I feel like our people, we need a sense, a feeling of unity among ourselves. Right now, if I go to the northern part of Africa, I feel like I'm not in Africa. When I look at them, I feel like they're not African. How can we bring that at least that feeling that, once you have that feeling is what draws you close to somebody, right? You fall in love with someone because you have that feeling first, and then you go close you talk to them. So if we have a single or common African Union passport, man, like all of Africans, we have it. We are like, oh yeah, okay, I don't care how you look. Show me your passport.
It would be so exciting.
Exactly, it will create a sense of unity among ourselves, and it will remind us that we are African, regardless of our countries, regardless of our colors or our tribes and all those stuff. But the interesting thing is, African Union passport, it was introduced in 2016. And it was like all the leaders, actually, they do have it. They do have it. And the plan was to give to our people in 2018, but it never happened. So this is the question to African Union. What really happened? Why we don't have it? I did a research. I asked our people that how many people will be willing to pay for African Union passports as a gesture to support or to fund our organization. Because if we want Africa's solution to African problem, then we need to fund African Union and not the West. 96%, I had like more than 1,000 people voted, 96%, they said we're willing to pay for it. Only 4%, pretty much maybe they're not African, they say we're not willing to pay for it. So I tagged African Union as African Union, what is the excuse? Come with a plan, tell us how much we need to pay.
And we will pay.
We'll pay. We are going to organize our youth so that we can pay for that to support our fund.